Hi there, and thanks for listening to the Biomass Magazine podcast. I'm your host, Anna Simet. This is episode 3 in our speaker preview series for the International Biomass Conference and Expo, which is being held in Nashville, Tennessee, March 31st through April 2nd. So we are a little over 3 weeks out. And leading up to the event, we are featuring some of our panelists to give a sneak peek of what they're going to talk about. Today we have with us Jessica Morrison of Golgix, who will be speaking about AI-driven decision intelligence. Jessica, welcome, and thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be at the event coming up here soon and explaining what we're doing with AI and talking about what everyone else is doing in terms of technology improvements.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good segue into my first question. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Golgix, its history, and what it is that you guys do?
Absolutely. So just to introduce myself too, I've been working with utilities, municipalities since 2006. I actually started my career building incentive programs for biomass plants, solar, wind. I evolved, I guess, and now working for Golgix, which really we've made and been working with ethanol plants as well as biodiesel, all sorts of industrial customers. But what we do is we are trying to solve a problem that we see across different verticals where there's massive amounts of data that's available sitting at different plants, but there's no intelligence. And sometimes there is, I shouldn't say no, but what it boils down to is we have created a solution with artificial intelligence where we're able to come in and take the data, organize the data, build a foundation, and then really work with the plant, the team, to help understand the entire process. So most artificial intelligence tools analyze data. They're looking to answer questions. You think of ChatGPT, we actually have been around as a company since 2020 and kind of before ChatGPT was all over the place and people knew about it. But what we are driving is a human-centric solution that is both bridging the gap between data that's within the plants and the knowledge that individuals have to solve problems.
Okay, so Jessica, plants already collect a lot of data. Why isn't that enough to improve performance on its own?
So when we talk about data, we've always, and the world I came from, that there's never enough data collection, right? And so that's not the right objective. It's data rich, information poor. So when you think about it, at an ethanol plant, biodiesel plant, a beer manufacturing facility, one of our customers, but there is no insight really outside of dashboards, alarms on what's happening with the entire process. So how do we take everything from inventory coming in, from feedstock, to look at what's actually happening that impacts the outcome? And how can data that's sitting there improve performance? So because data doesn't run a plant, people do, right? Operators are often looking at all these screens, and it's overwhelming. They're making between 7,000 decisions a day. So any small change in process, and that's really what we focus on. It's not a machine, it's not an alarm, but any small change in quality, temperature, yeast, health, mechanical, that can affect the outcome, it is hard to visualize or collect. And a lot of people that have been working in these, industries and facilities, they know that something's happening. But with all of this data surrounding them, it's really hard to day-to-day pinpoint what is it that's going to determine what my gut's telling me. So as a company, we're trying to really, again, bring those different data silos together, work with people. So we're a human-centric AI company, and I know there's a lot out there, but we're really focused on what knowledge do you have? Because at the end of the day, people run the plants. AI is great at ingesting data, looking for variability, looking for anomalies, and helping to drive, decisions. So it's a decision intelligence tool that, we're providing to different industries. So when you ask your question about why is there not enough data to solve problems, it's really not about the data that's there. It's about providing that intelligence to help individuals, the people on the floor, improve performance on a day-to-day basis.
That makes sense. Okay. So in your presentation abstract, you say producers face a growing gap between the data they collect and then the decisions their teams need to make in real time. Where are you seeing it cost producers the most in terms of yield, energy use, or carbon intensity?
Great question. The biggest losses across biofuels really come from variability. So that could come from, feedstock changes, biological process behaving differently, equipment performance, mechanical, issues that you have, maintenance, and drifts. So those small shifts that accumulate in each of the different parts of the process accumulate over time. And it doesn't matter, if it's in ethanol, biodiesel, biomass, renewables, manufacturing, the same patterns that we see continue to show up. Most plants cannot achieve excellent performance day to day without maintaining the level of consistency that they need, because that variability and all of these decisions, all of this data is in different silos with different individuals kind of monitoring or groups. So when variability increases, yield drops slightly, energy might rise, and carbon intensity increases. So it's all impacted when you start to look at the entire process and understand the incoming impact, again, from feedstock coming in to how a shift is operating, or just the different decisions that are being made. So with artificial intelligence, being able to collect that data in the background, and we are not, again, this is a human-centric platform that is focused on how can we assist these plants, these producers, with looking at that variability and finding areas that, might be able to improve. The other area, again, when you look at the big picture, that process is being able to test a different hypothesis for, if we did this or if we change this in shift one, how is that going to impact our outcome? So having the data behind all of this, both with CI, with yield increases, just having that foundation with organized data and being able to, make decisions that drive change or show different levels of, maybe it wasn't right, really empowers the producers and people we work with.
Okay, that was very well explained. On a practical level, how does AI actually help a plant run better day to day? And if you want to use it like a ethanol plant as a specific example, that's fine too.
Yeah, no problem. So if we think about, just as an example, with 50 hours between prop and firm drop, and even longer to distillation. So again, just talking ethanol, but this can relate to all of our customers, operators, in that situation, frequently don't know that the production decisions they're making now will set production off track, maybe for the next shift or the next day. With artificial intelligence kind of working in the background continuously, it can help predict fermentation, distillation outcomes, and send early warnings to correct and guide, an operator when they're maybe headed in the wrong direction, and allow them to have time to course correct. So, and this is across the board, having artificial intelligence looking at this data, this information continuously, not controlling, but being able to predict. So the intelligence is constantly learning from people, the inputs, every week we're talking to our customers. They are giving us the intelligence, because garbage in, garbage out. Being able to predict, that in 5 hours, if you don't do this, there's going to be, a failure, or there's going to be a contamination problem. So it's very powerful, and the fact that it's a collaboration tool that not only, is working with operators on the plant floor, but we can provide that information up to plant executives, management, showing that week after week, what are the great achievements? What are the problems that we solve? We really focus on the 80-20. So looking at every week, we want to solve a problem, meet your KPIs. And with AI and being trained, in an agentic network, you really can start to tackle those problems quickly. Now it has to be trained, and you have to know the root cause and kind of what your goals are. But, with biological systems, with fermentation, digestion, there's so much opportunity, so many decisions being made, so much data that once brought together, it's very powerful. And having an AI network monitoring that 24/7 to help provide those solutions is really empowering.
For sure. So, Jessica, I know people are beginning to accept and become very interested in AI. Who are you hoping to reach with your presentation at the IBCE? What industry sectors does this apply to?
So we work with industries across the board: food and beverage, discrete manufacturing, ethanol, biodiesel. So at the end of the day, when you look at manufacturing, industrial process, our technology and, artificial intelligence, when trained and really relating to the individuals that, are operating these plants, it can apply to any industry. So we're excited, to grow and meet, Biomass, and we've spoke to a few of those companies, but it really doesn't matter. We are an agentic technology. We can talk to existing platforms that are already in plants. So it's really about solving a problem. And what are the targets that you want to meet? Because, that plant has the data sitting there, and they have for years. And now it's, how do we take that data, organize it, and, start to grow intelligence behind it? But again, as I said, data is only as strong as the inputs. Artificial intelligence is only as strong as the training that it has. So it does take a lot of training. It doesn't matter the industry, but once we are, working together as a partnership and training all of that data to look for historical information, but really predict future outcomes. It doesn't matter the industry, but, had some great success within the biofuels market and looking to just meet with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Very exciting. And I actually interviewed you guys a year ago at the International Fuel Ethanol Workshop, and that was actually before I even used ChatGPT. So I knew about you guys first.
Hey, all right.
Yeah. Jessica, I think we've given our listeners a great preview of your presentation. Do you have any final words?
I look forward to seeing everyone at the conference, and thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Very excited for your presentation. To our listeners, Jessica will be presenting how AI-driven decision intelligence is improving yield, energy efficiency, and carbon intensity across biomass, RNG, and emerging SAF operations. She will be giving that Thursday, April 2nd at 8:30 a.m. on panel Advancing Technologies for Waste and Biomass Utilization. Biomass producers get in free to the International Biomass Conference and Expo. Learn more and register at biomassconference.com. That'll do it for this one. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you in Nashville.